it going, everybody? Happy Tuesday. Welcome to A Call of Arms with the Four-Armed Kali. In whispers we govern, through the elements we obscure. In static we command, in nightmares we pursue. We are earth and air, we are fire and water. We are the remembered, and we are the returned. We are the whispers. As one who works with the 10-armed Kali, I always keep 6 arms in my back pocket, being a 6-man. With that being said, I'll jump right into what Kali Ma typically is. She is typically depicted with 4 arms, although some depictions show her with 10. These arms symbolize her role as the source of both creation and destruction, and they each individually hold symbolic meaning, weapons, and gestures. With the Mars trine Uranus, we have the upper right hand of the Kali, often in the Abhaya Mudra, a gesture of fearlessness indicating protection of her devotees. Now, to possess Mars trine Uranus in your chart is to have been gifted by the universe with a subtle but exciting inner fuse, which when it goes off through the upper right arm of Kali, we can venture into fearlessly knowing the Divine Mother protects us from any opposing force coming our way, most abundantly seemingly to be casting vain imaginations, but not so much limited to graveyard projections. Through her we alchemize this and become one with the duats and develop abilities and allies beyond understanding. With the Mars opposition Neptune, we have the lower right hand of Kali. In the Virata Mudra, this is a gesture of granting boons, signifying her blessings and fulfillment of desires. Now, this aspect with this hand is particularly interesting because the generalized translation of its core is transforming relationships, which can lead to difficulties with clarity. Now, there may be a lack of focus and difficulty in directing energy and taking decisive actions on the opposition. With this preceding the right hand of protection, it seems as if there is some conjuration of energies to cloud or confuse, but superseded by the left hand, superseded by the upper hand's ability of protection, ability to grant a boon means, sorry, I got tongue-tied over my words here. Superseded by the upper hand's ability to grant a boon, which means to bestow a favor, gift, or blessing, typically in response to a request or as a reward, but for good deeds. It implies a benevolent act of giving something beneficial, often of a significant or transformative nature. Transformative relationships. Whereas one might not be so much hung up on the physical, as a quantum space has become more of a prerogative to pursue, leading to an immediate returning of energies to one's paternal or maternal parental figures, creating a loop of protection and strengthening with each individual attempt or attack. This is basically saying Kali Ma is catching a ball and throwing it right back, but rather than affecting you, it is affecting your elders, your parents, grandparents, what have you. With Mars trine Pluto, we have the upper left hand, which holds a sword, symbolizing the cutting away of ignorance and illusion, which we can layer into the core meaning of this aspect, which is killer instincts. Now, in general, people need a way to release pressure on a regular basis, or they, at some point, explode. This is where we have healthy outlets, which some have very unhealthy outlets. The cause can be buried rage or unaddressed anger, which is the algorithmic parameter of the norm. Now, the concept of a killer instinct in humans is complex and multifaceted, involving a mix of psychological, biological, and social factors, rather than a single innate drive. While some argue it's a primal survival mechanism, others point to learned behaviors and psychological conditions that can contribute to violent tendencies. Here's a breakdown of the psychology behind it. With biological factors, we have evolutionary perspectives. Some theories suggest a killer instinct is a vestige of our evolutionary past where aggression and dominance were necessary for survival and reproduction. In brain structure and function, research indicates that certain brain regions, like the amygdala, involved in fear and aggression, and the prefrontal cortex, involved in impulse control, play a role in aggressive behavior. This is where Self-discipline is an imperative aspect of internal alchemy and metaphysical alchemy. We've got hormonal influences. Hormones like testosterone, cortisol can all influence aggression levels. Cortisol is kind of one of those things where if you're constantly stressed out, anger easily triggered, these things release, they induce early telomere deprecating, ages you early, causes early onset dementia. It's just overall bad health issues entirely. With psychological factors, we have learned behavior. Aggression can be learned through observation, imitation, and reinforcement, especially in early childhood. With trauma and abuse, post-trauma, abuse or neglect can significantly impact an individual's psychological development and increase the likelihood of aggressive behavior. We have mental illness, certain mental health conditions such as psychopathy and some psychotic disorders, manic disorders, schizoaffective disorders, untreated and unmedicated. This can be associated with increased aggression and violence and easy agitation. Emotional regulation. Difficulty regulating emotions, particularly anger, can contribute to impulsive or aggressive actions. This is one who lacks emotional intelligence. This is one of those pillars of being that is imperative to overcome and manually run rather than autonomously. We have a need for control. Some individuals may seek to exert control over others through aggressive or violent behavior, especially if they feel powerless or insecure. We see this in power play dynamics or groups that target individuals, isolating them almost in a malignant narcissistic manner, where we run narratives to single them out, run a play almost as if it's for profit or some kind of gain, energetically, spiritually, monetarily. Either way, there's some kind of reward at the end of the successful depletion of the isolated individual. That's said that endeavor is of a successful nature. We've got psychological gratification, where some individuals may derive a sense of satisfaction or thrill from violent acts, particularly those with psychopathic tendencies. This is prevalent in people who enjoy ruining lives, people who get a thrill out of destroying rather than creating. And it's not even that they're destroying to create, they're destroying for the sheer fact of destruction. With social factors, we have social learning. Exposure to violence in media, peer groups, or family environments can normalize and reinforce aggressive behavior. Social isolation and lack of support. Individuals who lack social support or feel alienated from society may be more prone to aggression. I don't entirely agree with this one because my whole life was isolated, always made to feel like I was the odd man out, and I found strength in this adversity rather than feeling woe is me. I reflected inward and tapped into a realm of being with an inner solace of self and empowerment that I can't quite put into words or explain. There's cultural influences, cultural norms, values can shape attitudes towards violence and aggression. In essence, the killer instinct is not a single monolithic entity, but rather a complex interplay of biological predispositions, psychological vulnerabilities, and social influences. This can run synonymously with cults, political agendas, hidden motives, and malice intent, and the need to draw in a multitude of people into said malice motives. Now, while on the topic of Plutonian energy, we have Pluto and Chiron, which we are going to associate with the lower left hand of Kali. Often holds a severed head representing the destruction of the ego and the liberation of the soul, which can be layered right over the core concept of this aspect, which is embracing transformation and healing. Now, the sword of the upper left hand represents divine knowledge and the power to cut through ignorance, while the severed head symbolizes the destruction of the ego, which is necessary for spiritual liberation. The philosophy here can be interpreted to a more detailed perspective and breakdown of the left and the right hand path, showing the necessity of each and duality of both in order to maintain a harmonious, healed self while fearlessly moving forward despite attacks, trials, tribulations, pains, suffering, and demise. With that being said, Kali is not merely a destructive force, but rather a catalyst for spiritual awakening and the transcendence of limitations. Her entering this interpretation was perfect on the day of war because, as I have been saying, ordo ab chao, through chaos, order is derived. It's a necessity in human existence due to dogmatic views and pride, leading with ego rather than logical and analytical views. Now, we have a stellium in Pisces with the Moon, Jupiter, and Venus. In essence, a stellium involving the Moon, Jupiter, and Venus in Pisces would signify an individual with a highly intuitive, emotionally rich, and imaginative personality, with a strong focus on relationships, creativity, spiritual growth, enhancing self. It's crucial to consider the specific houses where the stellium falls in an individual's natal chart to gain a more detailed understanding of its influence. Now, while the stellium exists there, it's also important to understand the dynamic of those energies in correlations to where these energies fall in your specific chart individually. Now, I do have some numbers here. With the Moon, with stellium numbers, I've got Lunar 51. In Christianity, Psalm 51 is a prayer of repentance and a plea for restoration, highlighting the number's association with the divine forgiveness and grace. The number 51 is linked to divine power, sacred sites, and is seen as auspicious. Area 51 as a site, to be exact. Now, what I found interesting is my formula that I use a very specific math component to this when I'm deciphering the degrees in their exact positioning when I pull this chart to determine these numbers. And ironically, Kali popped out with this lunar number as a hidden message. In Sanskrit, the number 51 is related to the 51 characters of the language, considered the origin of sound, and is associated with the goddess Kali, often seen as the mother of language. Now, in mathematics, the number 51 appears in the study of the Mandelbrot set, specifically in relation to periodic points. Now, the Mandelbrot set is a fascinating object in mathematics. It's famous for its intricate, infinitely detailed structure and its connection to fractal geometry. It's defined by a simple iterative equation on the complex plane, and its visual representation is a mesmerizing display of self-similarity and complexity. Essentially, points in the complex plane are classified as either belonging to the Mandelbrot set if they remain bounded during iteration, or not if they diverge to infinity. This concept can be layered over our ability to transcend reality and experience exponential growth infinitely, or remain bound to the limitations of iterations itself, which would be the complexity of our natural physical matrix. I've got Jupiter 47, building strong bonds. This number emphasizes the importance of loyalty, honesty, and devotion in relationships. It encourages you to nurture positive connections and build strong, lasting bonds with others, whether it be platonic or intimate. This is an imperative philosophy to follow with any ventures, especially in a commercial aspect. I mean, would you want to do business with an unloyal, finicky, or fickle-minded individual? Or would it be more feasible to move forward with a more solid, level-headed individual that may prove to be more adaptable and flexible in a variety of scenarios, rather than incurring a constant of liability over asset momentum? We have Genesis 47 coming out, which recounts the reunion of Joseph and his family in Egypt during a severe famine. It details their settlement in Goshen, their interactions with Pharaoh, and Joseph's management of the famine crisis, which ultimately leads to the Egyptian people selling their land and becoming subjects of the Pharaoh. The chapter also includes Jacob's blessing of Pharaoh and his request for burial in Canaan. Genesis 47 helps us to see a God who provides, gives all blessings, and keeps his promises. He works to bless his undeserving people through the mediating work of one man who truly earned it, and his abundant blessings overfloweth into the world. I've got Venus 70. Now, the 70th angel of the Shemham Farash is Labamia. Labamia is often interpreted as Word of God creating all. Labamia is associated with alchemy and the ability to transform evil into good, and understanding the law of resonance, correlating to Kali, sound. It also relates to healing, regeneration, and revitalization. Labami is also connected to the goetic demon Seir and is said to help guide the deceased into the afterlife, kind of like Anubis. Now, the 70th spirit of Solomon, in the hierarchy of hell, Seir is a mighty and powerful prince ruling under Amammon, king of the east. He is associated with finding hidden treasures and providing insights into theft, potentially assisting in locating stolen goods or uncovering hidden wealth where some things might have been unlawfully changed, forged, fraudulently submitted, and or attested to. Now, unlike sun demons, Seir is generally considered to be of a good nature and willing to fulfill the requests of his summoner. Seir is not inherently malicious and is described as being indifferent to matters of good and evil as they are constructs of the flesh. Astrological significance in astrology, Seir is linked to dangerous writings, which could be interpreted as a warning or a potential area of influence. It's like if somebody commits fraud and alters a document or creates a fraudulent document, I guess that would be considered a dangerous writing, huh? We've got Mars in Libra, 127, referring to manifestation. This number suggests that your thoughts and actions are powerful tools for creating your reality. Stay focused on your desires and take inspired action towards them. Now, the first, with 127 equating to 10, which is 1, the first angel of the Shem HaMefarash is Vahuya, for Vahwa. This angel is associated with the concept of God the Exalter, or God the Exalted of all things. He is linked to the first verse of Psalm 3. Psalm 3:1 reads, "Lord, how many are my foes? How many rise up against me?" This verse is a part of a psalm attributed to David expressing his distress and the multitude of enemies surrounding him, particularly during his flight from his son, Absalom. Now, lament and trust. While the verse expresses David's lament and distress, it also sets the stage for his expressions of trust in God later in the psalm. The lament shows his immediate emotional response to the situation, being human, naturally, while the rest of the psalm demonstrates his faith in God's protection and deliverance. That's all I have for today. Hopefully you guys found it entertaining. I'll see you in the next one.